Welcome to SBI's GTM Value Creation Corner podcast with SBI Growth Advisory CEO Mike Hoffman hosting. In this episode, Mike Hoffman is joined by Dom Colasante, CEO of 2X Marketing, to explore how companies can adapt to changing buyer behavior, rising uncertainty, and the realities of AI. Mike and Dom reveal how to uncover hidden buyers to redefine success metrics and why leaders must evolve their go-to-market strategies to unlock growth in today's environment.
All right. Welcome, Dom. Welcome to the show.
Mike, thanks for having me.
All right. Hey, Dom, one of the things I like to do when we get started is I have all the guests tell us a little bit about their company and how you built this thing.
Sure. Yeah. So I was a CMO previously. I founded 2X about 7 years ago to really help innovate on the operating model, which is something I saw marketers kind of in need of a new idea around. So I guess I'm a CMO who's made the CEO transition. 2X is a go-to-market subscription service company. And so we're really in the business of providing managed services for the execution of marketing and the growth tech stack. A lot of our resources are tech certified, a lot of AI first individuals that can bring AI into the marketing and go-to-market function. And we spend a lot of time really helping leaders find ways to pull down the cost of execution, the cost of marketing, at the same time as increase the output and productivity and impact. And over the 7 years since we've been in business, we've grown about 100% per year. As a services business, it's not been easy. And now about 1,500 people have the privilege of being backed by insight partners and recognized partners. And I think we're doing something really special in the space.
That's great. And by the way, I will admit to all of our listeners that we are a client of 2X twice. So we're going on our second round as we reinvent marketing. And Dom, tell us a little bit about something that people might not know about you, not necessarily business related.
Yeah. So, what's funny is our jobs as professional service leaders and CEOs and marketers and growth folks, I think can be really abstract some days. And so, you're basically working at a desk and typing and money pops out. And so that's a great part of the business world. But my passion is on weekends. I live on a farm, love farm labor, riding a tractor, taking down a tree, putting in a fence, a sense of like physical, real world accomplishment. Be like, I did that. And so that's kind of how I balance the running the global company, but also, getting to see the fruits of your labor immediately after you do it.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I think most jobs today, they're abstract. Like what we do during the day doesn't show any immediate gratification. So I am with you, and just a little exchange fact. So my first job, when I was 9 years old, I learned how to milk cows in southeastern Wisconsin and worked on the farm. And now on weekends, I cook because that is the ultimate and immediate gratification. You go to the market and you get some stuff and all these raw ingredients, and then you turn it into something. So I'm with you. It is a good break from what we do during the day. So thanks for sharing that.
Right on. Yeah. And all the variables are controllable in those worlds, right? We don't have like global factors and competitors and changes. Maybe the weather is a factor, but it's much less uncertainty when you do that kind of work.
Right. I would like to say that tariffs don't impact when I make a zucchini torta salata, but that might not be true anymore. But
who knows?
It depends. There are certainly much less variables, and almost all of them are controllable. And that'll sort of lead into the conversation because I wanted to talk a little bit about what's on the mind of CEOs right now. So today, the date we're recording this is September 19th, 2025. And it has been an interesting year to say the least. And with our adventure in moving, and making a very big bet on AI, I've had about 100 conversations with CEOs over the last 90 days. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a summary of what I'm hearing, and then I want to hear what you were hearing from CEOs. What's top of mind? Certainly, number one is navigation of the tariff issue and whether that's direct or indirect. If in the direct case, like, hey, I'm a steel company in Canada, that's not good. In the indirect case, it is, I don't necessarily have a direct impact from it, but my customers are being impacted. And so that has taken up a lot of mind share and paused a lot of decisions this year for CEOs. So that's number one. Number two that's been on their list is AI. And again, none of this is a surprise, right? I'm reporting the news at this point. AI, from a sense of, and there, I think there's an increasing level of frustration. How do I drive productivity internally? And my board is asking me, when am I going to see 30% FTE reductions due to AI? And then externally, how am I taking if I have a services offering, how am I embedding AI into that to drive better outcomes for customers and clients? And or how am I building that into my product? What is not on the list of things is doing a transformational growth program. And it's not that growth isn't important; it's always on the list, right? It's always in the top 5 of things that they need to do. But that has been my the feedback that I've gotten from CEOs, and I'm interested in what you're hearing right now.
Yeah, I'm definitely hearing the same, maybe with different dimensions. Like I think on the tower side you brought up, I think the real problem that all creates is uncertainty. And I think as we've been in many of the cycles over the last, couple years, we've seen highs, we've seen lows, we've seen disruption, we've seen chaos, we've seen really great times. And I think the difficulty is like not knowing which of those we're about to go into. And that causes sort of this like question of, do I just wait and make a decision? Do I lean into it? I'm also seeing a lot of, while there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of potential, I continue to see that the cure for most of these problems is more revenue.
Mhm.
That solves a lot of other issues. Gives you a lot of optionality. And, to say that growth is more important than ever is probably a cliche, but I think, finding ways to grow in these environments is probably more important than ever, and not being hesitant and leaning in the right ways and figuring out what's the opportunity, where do we have a strength we can double down on, where can we invest when others aren't, how do we unlock some gain that we've already invested in that we haven't fully realized, and how do we find growth in this moment? Because growth will solve a lot of those other issues if we can get in front of it.
Yeah, 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 absolutely, and you're right. This has been it's been an interesting time. Now, I'm going to leave the pandemic out of this, but in mid 2022, with the interest rates going up, right, and it made a 5% move on the Fed funds rate over a period of probably 6 months. That was the beginning, and wars breaking out, and then I think there was an optimism that after post election things were going to get stable. At least we'd know what was going on. And then there were the conversations around tariffs, which we all woke up and said, "Geez, that's exactly what I needed. I was waiting for someone to do that." And it has just been a never-ending series of that. And so I guess the end of the punchline of the whole thing is what you said: growth is harder. And this is no longer the world that we lived in of stability, but it's not gone. It's just the playbook has changed. And so my question for you is, how are you seeing CEOs and companies navigate a little bit differently from a marketing perspective to capture that growth?
Thanks for reminding me of those last couple of years. I was raising a funding round during the interest rate adventure, and so I will try to forget that forever, but I don't think I ever will. In this environment, for sure, there's certainly changes, and there's another factor that's happening, maybe unique in sort of the marketing lane, and while all of that change and uncertainty and volatility is going on in the macro around us, there's a change that's really occurring in the world of how buyers buy. And in the past, we had this beautiful journey of a buyer would do some research, go on your website, fill out a form, talk to a sales rep, get a demo or some type of product understanding, and then go into a evaluation and buy. And no buyer buys that way anymore. And we've known that for some time, but I think add in the AI search to the equation, and it's even more pronounced. Um, Buyers are consuming all of their own research on their own. They're learning things about you and your market and your competitors without you having any awareness that they're doing that. They're basically completing their short list and maybe even their whole decision before they reach out to you. And so, as a leader trying to find growth and trying to sell in the right places and market in the right places, it's really hard to know where those hidden buyers are. And that challenge requires a very different go-to-market engine. It requires very different technology, very different processes, and really different understanding of what success is. Like success is no longer a marketing attributed lead or opportunity. Success is a form of making sure you have preference and trust before someone lets you know that they're interested in buying. And that change has caused a lot of disruption in KPIs and metrics and leading indicators and scorecards that all look green, and yet our revenue growth isn't green. Um, it's caused issues in how marketers report success. It's caused a lot of CMO turnover we're seeing in the world. I think it's also caused a lot of CEOs to lose confidence in the predictability of growth. That we can do all the right things and we can make the right investments and hire the right people, seemingly, and then we don't get the output. And like, where is the problem? Was it the people? Was it the campaign? Was it the message? Was it the targeting? Was it the tech we use? We don't know. And so part of that is a real shift that, like, if there couldn't be a worse time, I think, to be undergoing that sort of change in growth. But what's good is there's, I think, a lot of technology coming that helps us navigate that. There's new best practices being written. There's providers like, you appreciate the shout out of what what 2X is helping SBI on. I think SBI is a wonderful partner to help someone navigate that as well in the go-to-market and the sort of strategy lens. But I think there's real change in like how growth happens, that is more structural to the buyer journey than it is just the macro environment around us.
It's interesting that once in a while we'll hear about RFPs. I'm like, really, an RFP? Like that just seems a little bit old school. Like, I think you could do all that investigation and get 90% of that information on your own. But that's aside from the point. The complication of what works and what doesn't work. Here's a question for you. The world is flooded with marketing material and information, and it's almost, and maybe it's me, it's almost invisible at this point. Like, I can't see it. What are the different ways that companies are having to pivot and think about how I get my message in front of the right buyers?
Yeah, and I have the same question for you related to how a salesperson navigates through that world, but I'll answer the marketing side of it first.
Yeah.
I think across our clients, we've run thousands of campaigns in lots of different industries. And the one thing that we see that's sort of timeless is content that helps the buyer solve a problem and leaves the person better than you found them, even if they never buy from you, is the content that builds trust, creates engagement, and builds preference for your brand. And so it's not about your product. It's not about what you do. It's not about your case studies necessarily. It's about what you've learned from doing this a long time that can help the human in the business who's solving some issue think about how to solve that differently, solve it more intelligently, and how do you provide value and impact to them in the content alone. If you can do that, you've earned the right to tell them more. And then when you get the right to tell them more, then you can tell them who you are and what you do and why you're great and different. And so it's really like authenticity in content. And I don't mean just sort of AI produced, lots of assets. I mean like real unique ideas, original ideas that AI can certainly help you articulate in lots of formats. But most businesses are full of subject matter experts, practitioners, people who have sat in the seat of the customer, and they have views of how to do things differently. And that view is the root of great content and great things to break through the noise.
Mm-hmm. It's helpful, and um, I agree. But even at that, I struggle with, again, the information overload that's out there is is finding the right route to people to help them discover things that they want, not that they need. Because in today's world, if somebody needs something, they're gonna find the path to go look at that. And then I think it's a matter of like, how do we as a company, how does our marketing strategy get us in the path of the car when the need happens? But even I didn't know I wanted that, and getting people's eyes on that content, there has to be, and every day there's got to be new and more creative ways to get the right eyes on that. And I don't know if it's is that um, a hyper focused set of channels to the right personas? What does that look like?
Yeah, I would say there's probably two layers of it. I say one is hyper focused and one is hyper broad. And I think when you're in the middle is where you have like the issues with breaking through. But take hyper broad, for example, most people are going to start their information journey today with an LLM search. Um, and their LLM search is not a keyword, it's a question. And so if you have content that specifically answers some of those longer tail questions, how do I navigate breaking through the noise in an industry like this that sells to these kind of companies, with this kind of competitive dynamic, right? That's the kind of question you might ask now. If you, as the provider of sort of the solution for that, but also have thought leadership on how to do that, and you're able to build that content, make it available, make it findable in the places where the LLMs look, unfortunately, like Reddit, like Wikipedia, like other types of social communities, um, that gets you found in sort of a mass market way. And getting that broad visibility is, I think, how you create brand awareness in the new world. Secondly, I think if you can find out people that might be on that journey, we think we have the benefit of a lot of AI tools out there that help us on predictive intelligence and intent data and signals. And if you're able to get insight into some of those people that might be in a journey because they're on certain sites where they're consuming information, or there's a tool that will pick up who they are, that kind of really targeted marketing, email, ads, social, engagement directed things can be really impactful. It's a thing we realize in our personal life where you think you need a new pair of sunglasses and all of a sudden you're getting sunglass ads on Facebook. How'd they know? Because you were exhibiting behavior online that indicated you were searching for, a warm place to go for vacation, or you were, thinking about something like that is a complementary good. There's analytics and algorithms that are serving that up. Same applies to B2B. And so if you are in a place where you are exhibiting signs that might be for complementary goods or the exact problem, and you can acquire that data through a tool like Sixth Sense or others, and then be able to use that to target, I think that works really well. But you kind of have to be of one altitude or the other. I think when you're just sort of marketing to a segment, and trying to engage people who are in your ICP but may not be in market, is almost like that's where the most noise is, because that's the playbook that every marketer's been using for the last 10 years. And so you kind of have to go in a unique way, all the way up or all the way down, I think.
And I'm going to ask you a question that's probably on everybody's mind, and I want to know whether it's true or false. In this hyper targeted area where, hey, why am I seeing ads for shoes and everything else? Is there any chance these devices are actually listening to what we're saying when we're not online, or is that just people's imagination and they've sent other signals out there that have them get Facebook ads and other things sent their way?
It might be above my pay grade,
Okay.
but as a leader of a marketing service business, I've been trying to buy that data for years and I can't find out where to buy it. So if it
Right.
is being captured, I assume the goal is to monetize it. And I think people like me would know where to buy it.
Right.
And so I don't actually believe that our phones and their devices are listening to us. What I think they're doing is they're tracking our behavior. Back to the example of someone who's looking at island vacations, likely might also be looking for sunglasses. They're doing that. They're doing these comparisons and connections between search behavior that you didn't actually go look for sunglasses, but you did look for something related. And I think that is happening across our devices when you're on a browser on your phone, or you're on Instagram and you thumb stop on something that, they can track how long you've looked at it. And I think that data is being used to drive behavior and drive intent. And so it's maybe a form of sharing your data, but not in the voice way, I believe.
Yeah, you know what, and I think it probably gets more, and it gets better and better with, now we're talking about things like exabytes and zettabytes of data that are out there that have monitored human behavior, that it just gets better, and it's our imagination. So, if you want to run an experiment,
Yeah.
have a conversation about something obscure and see if it pops up in your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed. You had asked a question about on the sales side, how some of that complications coming in. Now we did a buyer study, and for salespeople, the buying decision groups are getting bigger. There are more ambiguous figures of authority that are coming in. The customers and clients are more educated at the point of purchase. And certainly it does make it a little bit more difficult. They're far more educated, and that's been going on for a long time. I think the real struggle, you take a step above that, is um, there there are misinterpretations of signals in go-to-market because it's so complicated. So if you look at growth strategy, your go-to-market operating model, your talent, and your data and insights, and then you look at all of the things that happen and things that you need to do within an organization to design those right, and that's across marketing and customer success and sales. Um, if you do this at random as a CRO, you have about a 1 in 18 million chance of doing it. And the challenge is when you start to look at, look across those things and what are the signals that you're getting, it's beyond human intuition and experience at this point, because you will quickly misinterpret a negotiation problem, right? Hey, this group of our team has a negotiation problem, when really they're over concentrated in a vertical market where you have a bad product market fit. And getting to that information, again, because of the complication, we talked about human behavior and exabytes and zettabytes of data that are out there. It's the same thing in go to market. Is become so complicated that it requires a machine to figure out what the root cause of the issue is. That's 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 our observation right now, and that's our point of view, which is why we're introducing AI into everything we do. People don't have time to guess anymore. You need to be right.
Yeah. So how are you seeing AI play into that? I mean, are there platforms, are there agents, are there tools that can kind of pick up those signals and kind of give you the recommended action that maybe as a human you couldn't have seen because you didn't know all the data points?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. We as SBI, we took a bold approach, and our journey started about 4.5 years ago, right? This is our entire world, is getting to the answer of this. And about 4.5 years ago, we were all sitting around in our studio in Dallas, and I had some experience from former private equity world, where we acquired an AI company that could predict the consumption of Entenmann and baked goods in New York City based on the weather. It was crazy. At the time, the market wasn't ready for it, and the technology was probably more expensive and a little bit limited. I looked at the team and said, at some point we've got so much data on successful growth programs. We should be able to teach a machine that and then ingest data from a company and be able to say things like, this company has a 75% chance of missing their top line number in the next 2 to 3 quarters for these three reasons. And we all kind of laughed and we looked at each other and we walked out and we caught our flights back home, but we never stopped thinking about it. And so that journey continued and continued and continued. And we continued, building out AI when, and this is long before people rolled out of bed in 24 and like, hey, I should do something about AI. And we taught a machine to look at it. So our business is fundamentally changing, where we want to get to the answer faster. And now we've developed something that will, far surpasses human intuition, surpasses human experience, to the point where you can get to an answer in 8 minutes that will take a RevOps team of 50 8 weeks to get to.
Right.
And we feel, and now it's disruptive to our business, but we believe that people are too busy to guess. They don't have time to guess, and so we need to get to the right answer. Now, with that in mind, here's what I will say: AI is smart. AI is not wise. So in the end, every recommendation that AI makes is same level of effort. And so it takes a human to help interpret that. And so I don't, this is market feedback, not our feedback, but there has been some commentary from the external market and people who have seen this, that we're doing things that they don't see anybody else doing right now. Again, disruptive to our business, which is what we set out to do. But future for us, how it's going to look in a few years, don't know. But for our clients, awesome.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about that, and I listen, as most CEOs do, to a lot of the points of view around AI and how it's going to change our businesses. And what I consistently hear is this view that it's going to replace a lot of humans, and I have not seen that as a service company leader. What I think is really interesting of what you just shared is, I think what you talked about was an augmentation of where AI can do things that a human brain can't process at the speed and the magnitude of signals with this sort of, you know, um, outside third party, non emotional process that you probably want. But what I think is really interesting is that you've put together, I think, a way to look at it where you have AI supporting human decision making, but the human decision making is still a critical part of taking the action and having the wisdom and knowing, where to apply it and not, and how to execute the idea. And I don't hear a lot about that balance and a lot about, how the job of the human will change because of AI, but the job of the human doesn't go away. And that's a piece that I think a lot of the hype out there misses. We see that in marketing. I mean, I've been told for years that marketing is going to get eliminated by AI, and I've never been busier. And my company's
Right.
grown 3 times in the last 2 years because of this. And so it's an interesting dynamic, and I appreciate the like the real example of how it's being brought to life.
Right. The demise of the outside salesperson has been predicted since like the 1920s, and it's never come to pass. Um, but the one thing that I'm seeing is just this on. It was a CEO meeting a couple of weeks ago, a CEO group that I'm part of. The 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 poor expectations that investors have. Investors are reading everything on the web, which we know everything you read on the web is true. And they're asking CEOs, hey, when am I going to see a 30% reduction in FTEs because of AI? And 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 that shows a little bit of lack of understanding of where this is going in the real world. Because initially, you can't just have AI people design stuff to work on processes and get all the technical AI people in there to do that. You need to take them and surround them with people who understand the context of the business. And by definition, your teams are actually going to get bigger before they get smaller. They're going to. It's not a magic wand, and the expectation that it's a magic wand, I think, is I think there's there's too much enthusiasm. Now, will jobs get replaced? Sure. The cost of in intelligence, analytical cognition is going to go to zero, but there still has to be interpretation. So, Dom, if I gave you something that came out of AI and said, "Hey, AI is saying you should do this," would you just take that in blind faith and do it? Right. The answer is
Absolutely not.
no. But if you had an expert in that particular area that's helping you interpret what AI is giving feedback on, and you know that they've got years and years of experience and their wisdom behind it, then then it's better. They got you to the answer faster, and then they said, here are the nuances to that answer based on your business.
Yeah, and I think AI might provide an idea that we hadn't considered, or a way to look at a problem that we hadn't even thought of. And it gives us, gives the human the prompt now to then go and validate and confirm and see if, the signals we can pick up seem to jive with that point of view. But I don't think at all it's ready to run your decision making on. I think it's a support resource. And the thing that we see most, and I think you're exactly right, that the volume of humans or the cost goes up in this period as we're transforming. We see something really weird happening in marketing right now on this, and it's that most marketing departments, half their budgets on labor, half their budgets on program, think of advertising, events, technology, those kind of things. Um, Oftentimes, too much of the budget is on labor, and not enough is on the program. And so we know that AI can make the workforce more productive, allow us to maybe reduce some of the headcount on the human side, free up that money to spend it more on the programs that actually engage the buyer. And that's the vision. What we're seeing in so many organizations is when you go down the road of having to build AI use cases, you have to buy technology, you have to create some new programs, you got to build some pilots. Um, and that money is being taken from the program budget to do that. And so what we're doing is we're further reducing the program budget so that we can make the humans more efficient. What we're actually doing is we're spending more money on the human side, actually. And until we get that result, until we say now we're going to redesign the org and remove 20% of people, or now we're going to measure our unit cost economics and prove that we're 50% more productive, you actually have made the problem worse in the short term. And I think a lot of sort of AI projects are not thought about through that lens. It's like, I'm going to do AI. I'm going to like create a project and a pilot. I'm going to run some programs and I'm going to create some value. And unless you really like benchmark, where is our current state, our baseline in some kind of unit cost view, number of output, cost per output, productivity, some way that you can measure an improvement. And if you don't measure the before and after, you really don't know if you've gotten better. And most of these situations we're finding, we're actually making the actual problem, which is not enough media spend or not enough engagement, worse. We think that's an interesting problem that we're all in the learning phase as leaders, and we're in the business of helping people navigate through that and say, how do you really get your unit cost economics right? But I think that's a problem that a lot of AI projects have in like their core design that they haven't necessarily built thought processes around.
So any final thoughts for the group?
Maybe one, I think that's emerging is that as a growth leader, which I think is the CEO's job in a lot of cases, sometimes the CRO, the CMO, you run a professional services company. You may not realize that, but you have a team of knowledge workers. You've got capacity, you've got inputs, you've got outputs, you've got productivity. And where I think the real innovation when it comes to AI, when it comes to more productivity, when it comes to getting more out of your staff, is to look at the professional services world. Look at how ProServe companies run, how they track what people do, and how they optimize that work and those outcomes, and how they apply AI to workflows and really try to bring more capacity. I think the more I've talked to growth leaders about that, I think it resonates quite a bit that there's kind of a methodology for how to run your business. I think as growth leaders, we over-index on what's the marketing strategy, what's the sales strategy, what's the growth strategy, what's the CX strategy. But I think there's also like what's the operating model and how do professional services businesses get the most value out of labor. And that's really your job as a growth leader. And so we touched on some of those pieces today, but I think it's a big part of how we're all going to evolve and how we're all going to deliver more growth in a time when we need it more than we ever have.
Yeah, agreed. And I think professional services organizations, we're only scratching the surface on what's going to change as we go forward.
Yeah.
Everybody should stay tuned. Well, Dom, thank you very much. Appreciate all your time, your insight. Always valuable, and you're so valuable as a partner to SBI. Thank
It
you.
was a fun conversation. Always great hanging out with you. If you want to milk a cow sometime, let me know.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thanks, Dom. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Bye.
You've been listening to SBI's GTM Value Creation Corner podcast with CEO Mike Hoffman hosting. Visit sbigrowth.com to read SBI's latest research, join upcoming events, or learn about SBI's GTM services. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and connect with us on LinkedIn.